And it's a question, I think midlife gives us that question, because the question bubbles up, who am I really? If I'm not the false self, if I'm not all that stuff that the world expects of me, who am I? Because when I stop playing that game, there's nobody home. And the risk is to panic and to think that there's nothing else there, so I must do that more. And the challenge, or the invitation, is to actually enter the emptiness and make ourselves our home there. It's okay. It's okay. And because slowly, it's a bit like going to a shop and say, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that, and walk out with nothing. You'll walk out light. You'll walk out thinking, whew, what a relief. Because we normally go in and say, oh, I must have this, I'll have one of this, one of that. And in the end, we lugging this stuff home, thinking, why did I buy all this stuff? Why do I live like this? Because we're scared there'll be nobody home if we don't bring all that stuff home with us. And Jesus is saying, it's okay. Leave everything and follow me. And slowly the true self starts to come out from its hiding. And that's where we need to trust ourselves, because we both fear that there's nobody home, or we fear that who we find will be terrible, will be unattractive. What if I don't like who I really am? That's a hard question. But I guarantee you that the self that God made us to be will be 1,000,000 times more satisfying than the false self that has learned to play the game to suit the world that suits nobody, not even ourselves. Following God and coming to a place of more honest self, because when you come to a more true self, you'll still be able to do the work you do and better. The true self only loves. The false self doesn't love. The false self manipulates. It loves those who love back. It loves to get what it wants. It loves to pretend to be loving. But it's not real love. The false self doesn't forgive. The false self remembers, oh yes, I know what you did to me last year. I'll pretend to forgive, because then everyone thinks, oh, I'm so nice. But actually, I won't forget. And the false self manipulates reality, whereas the true self can actually forgive and let it go. So you're much lighter, you're much freer. And you'll recognize that, because you don't have to hang on to memories of who's done what to you. You don't have to keep a score, a record of who's in and who's out, who's up and who's down, who's better than you and who's worse off than you. It's almost like a much freer, more open, more resolved self. And you'll know it, because it's like it won't be easy, but it's so much more of a relief. And a lot of it you have to take by faith, because God's not going to prove that the true self is nicer than the false self so that you can let go of the false self to move to the true self. It's like you've got to be willing to let go of those shoes that hurt so much and know that He'll give you a pair of shoes that fit perfectly. But you can't keep your old shoes on and say, well, I want to hang on to these, to make sure that what you got for me is better. Because that's not faith. Yeah, that's not faith. And God works with us very gently. He never pushes us faster than we're growing or can grow. So when He asks you to let go of something, it's often small. He says, try a new way. Say hello to that lady. You never greet her. But maybe she's grumpy, but maybe she's in a lot of pain. But just say hello to her. And you find you can begin to be more true to yourself in small ways that you realize are very significant. So He's not wanting you to give up everything and jump into an unknown. He'll take you gently and appropriately, because He knows how much we can cope with. So He'll never overwhelm you, ever. Otherwise He would be, because He's loving, He knows what you need, what we need.
So you just need to be willing, open and willing just to
That's exactly right. Yeah. He says, if you hunger and thirst for right relationship, you will get it. It's where we put our hunger. If our hunger is for the world's acclaim, we'll always be hungry. will never be satisfied. It's like when you're very hungry and you eat junk food, it fills you, but it never satisfies. Whereas we need to almost sharpen our hunger and our thirst and point it in the right direction for the right food. You know, when your body says, I want something savory, not sweet. And our spirit is very sensitive to what we feed it. But we also mustn't feed it the wrong food, because we just get bloated and diabetic and horrible.
Feel sick.
Yeah, and sick, very sick. So we need to sharpen our hunger and direct it in the right direction. Because when we come to Him hungry and thirsty, He'll give us water that will never thirst again. He'll give us bread we'll never hunger again. He really will satisfy our soul. But it takes time to find that false self that has been so buried and so bullied, the true self, that's been so bullied by the false self. It's like wanted to destroy that, the true self, because it wants the world to approve and it doesn't want to show what it really is. So it's a journey. Is that okay?